Good afternoon, Broncos country, and welcome back to Facebook Live. My name is Zack Kelberman. I am your Broncos reporter for 24/7 Sports, and I'm coming to you live with a special Facebook Live. As you can see, I'm welcoming in my podcast partner in crime right here. You guys have heard him. Some of you know him. His name is Jensen. We are live right now at the NFL Combine after Vic Fangio and John Elway both spoke today. Both amazing revelations, amazing breaking news that we learned from the Broncos. A lot of new tidbits. But say hello to him, Chad.
Hey, what's up, guys? Not so much from Fangio. You know, he kind of keeps it pretty tight-lipped. He's not one to be too – he's kind of one of those guys, loose lips sink ships, right?
Right.
I mean, you're not getting much. But fortunately, Elway came in later in the day, and he dropped some knowledge on us, shared some things. We should probably talk about what he said about the 2019 quarterback class, which was kind of interesting because the question from one of the other guys in the media asked him, hey, you know, everyone thinks 2020 is the great quarterback class. What do you think of the 2019 group? And he basically said, to paraphrase, that, you know, look, the 2019 class, we're still doing our work on them. We're evaluating them. We understand why a lot of people like the 2020 class, but we think there's some good players in the 2019 class.
Yeah, I came away from this thinking that it's not a sure thing the Broncos will draft a quarterback this year. A lot of Broncos fans are guaranteeing Drew Lock in a Broncos uniform or Kyler Murray. I came away thinking the Broncos are really genuinely content with having Joe Flacco as the starting quarterback this season. Yeah. I think Elway and Fangio both want to go BPA in the draft. Whether that's a cornerback, a safety, an inside linebacker, it doesn't necessarily have to be a passer. And my feeling, just my feeling, I think I came away thinking that Drew Lock is not a sure thing at number 10 overall.
Right. And that's even verbiage that Fangio used earlier today. Was he used the phrase best player available. And he said that he believes the roster is situated just right with the different needs and weaknesses, but also strengths, that they can go best player available. Now, usually what that means is it's not just best player available. Usually that means best player available at a position of need. There's kind of a happy medium for most teams. But the Broncos sitting there at pick 10, I mean, we'll see whether or not Drew Lock falls, and if he does, what the Broncos end up doing. But, I mean, you're talking about players that could be there like DeAndre Baker, the corner.
Greedy Williams, Devin White. The Broncos have so many roster holes.
TJ Hawkinson.
That's right.
That's another thing you talked about on Twitter, is that Elway talked about, look, every year we've been trying to fix the tight end position, and that's not going to change this year.
No, it's not. And they have to have one because they don't have a starter on the roster right now. They don't even have a healthy tight end with Jake Butt and Troy Fumagalli. Hireman's a free agent. He's probably not coming back. It is a big position of emphasis. So, yeah, nothing can be ruled out. But my feeling coming away from the Combine today is that Drew Lock or quarterback at number 10 overall, or even in the second round, is far from a sure thing. But we're going to take some of your questions. I'm waiting for some more comments to come in. It's kind of a slow afternoon. I see you, Greg. What's up, Natalie? I see you, Jerry. It has been a long time. I haven't been on Facebook Live for a little while. I've taken a little hiatus, put a little more effort in the podcast and the written content.
Subscribe on iTunes.
That's right. iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere you can find a podcast, the Huddle Up podcast. If you're a Broncos fan, you will love it. But, yeah, I'm back in the swing now. We have a lot to bring to you guys. Any questions you guys want to know about the Combine, Elway, Fangio, what the Broncos plans are, please send them in. We'll be on for about 20 more minutes or so. Yeah. We want to get to as much as we can here. What's up, Greg? What's up, Natalie? What's up, Megan? Scott? Scott wants Greedy Williams. And I can see a cornerback now because Elway said we have a starter in Chris Harris Jr. who will be coming back. The Broncos will pick up his option. They don't have a number 2. Bradley Roby is a free agent. Tremaine Brock's a free agent. They will scout free agency, and they will scout the draft, and that's why Greedy Williams, like you say, is also a good option for them.
Fangio also said that they're not writing off Bradley Roby. They're going to let him test the market, though. But they do have an interest in bringing him back. So I guess it kind of depends with regard to Bradley Roby how much the old no-fly zone sizzle is still attached to his name when he hits the open market. But one good way to look at it is he's been in the league 5 years, and of those 5 years, he really only had one kind of down, inconsistent year, and that was this past season, which is freshest on the minds of GMs who are going to be out there looking to pay guys. So that's the biggest setback for him, which might portend a little bit better for him possibly returning to the Broncos.
Yeah, and the worst possible time for Roby to fall on his face as a starter, taking over for Keep to leave. I got the feeling that they're going to let Roby test the waters. If he signs, they're not going to shed any tears. They're okay with losing him. Yeah. They have a couple young cornerbacks on the roster. They have Chris Harris Jr., so they're okay there. But Andrew wants to know what kind of holes will be filled by free agents.
the biggest of the needs, and Fangio talked about Wednesday morning that he sees needs at all three levels of the defense: D-line, off-ball linebackers, and secondary. So I think where you're going to see most of the free agent dollars spent personally is at off-ball linebacker. I mean, he did mention Todd Davis and Josie Jewell by name today, but I think you're going to see some money spent at off-ball linebacker, corner, possibly safety, specifically Adrian Amos.
Yeah, they can go anywhere with this pick. I mean, they have needs all over the roster, and it gives the Broncos good flexibility, and that's why Elway talks about always filling those holes on the open market and going into the draft, selecting the best player available. He never wants to be pigeonholed into one player or one pick. He wants to take the true best player on his board, just like he did last year with Bradley Chubb. I mean, he fell into his lap. Yeah. Sean wants to know, what's our first-round pick if you had to tell us right now on February 27th?
Oh, man, that's tough. If I had to say, the impression I got coming out of Elway's presser today was that the Broncos probably aren't going quarterback this year. They're definitely not going Kyler Murray. The height thing sticks in Elway's craw. I mean, that's an issue. He talked all about it, waxed poetic.
Specifically, he mentioned that.
Yeah, he talked about height. He also, I noticed, mentioned that for some reason he specified the fact that Kyler Murray was a one-year starter at Oklahoma, and as great as an athletic as he was, 1 year. So I think if the Broncos did take a quarterback, it would be someone with a little bit more of a track record, which is Drew Lock. In terms of the top three, the only one with a track record beyond one season. Dwayne Haskins, 1 year at Ohio State. Kyler Murray, 1 year at Oklahoma. Drew Lock, he's actually got a body of work that they can compare, not only his actual production, but did he develop? Did he improve? Did he regress in certain areas? But dollars to donuts, you back me into a corner, I'm going to say Devin White at pick 10.
And Locke also literally has the body that Elway covets. He's a traditional, conventional quarterback, the big body, big arm. That's the guy Elway falls in love with. And Elway said today that he doesn't really value shotgun quarterbacks predominantly. He likes quarterbacks under center, and his reasoning behind that was because it helps the running game. Right. And a lot of Broncos fans think Joe Flacco's going to air the ball out. No. Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman are still going to make this offense go. That is still the engine to this offense. So my first-round pick, if they don't go quarterback, I'm with Chad. I think Devin White or a corner like Greedy Williams or DeAndre Baker, those fill two major needs, and it gives Fangio a new toy to play with.
And DeAndre Baker, for what it's worth, he's probably the best scheme fit in the whole cornerback class for what Big Fangio likes to do. So.
Yeah. Zoe wants to know, do you think we get Golden Tate? I'll answer this real quick. I don't think so after the Emmanuel Sanders news. Elway did confirm that's also part of our breaking news here, that Emmanuel Sanders' option will be picked up. He will return in 2019. It's his last year of his contract. So the Broncos will have that veteran, that speedster, that burner receiver on the roster, so they don't need a Golden Tate. If Sanders wasn't picked up or he was released, then Tate would be an option. But as of now, they have possession receivers, they have a burner. I think they're set at that position.
The one thing I'll say is, it's still really early in the offseason process, and there's a lot of dominoes that still have to fall with regard to pro personnel. Everyone is paying close attention to what's going to happen with Antonio Brown because there are 3 or 4 different teams hot in the running that are pining for Antonio Brown. Not everyone's going to be able to get him. Obviously, there can only be one, just like Highlander. And whatever teams are on the outside looking in, I've been told by a few birdies, that those teams might come knocking with regard to Emmanuel Sanders. So don't completely slam the door on the idea of Sanders possibly being traded, but both Fangio and Elway on Wednesday were very complimentary in terms of their plans and vision for Emmanuel Sanders being here to play out his final year on his deal.
And I think they're confident he'll be ready for week 1 after that Achilles injury.
Like
so they wouldn't, I think, have picked up that option if they weren't, confident in his recovery. So it's good news for Sanders, good news for the Broncos offense. Mike wants to know, do you think we get C.J. Mosley?
No.
It's not going to happen. It was always a pipe dream, and what we heard from the Combine is the Ravens GM is working on an extension or a new contract with C.J. Mosley. He would be a fantastic player in this defense. I love him a lot. It's just not realistic at all.
I mean, can you imagine if you are the Baltimore Ravens, you're letting Joe Flacco go and C.J. Mosley? I mean, as excited as Ravens fans probably are for Lamar Jackson, that might be asking a little bit too much of him.
Thomas wants to know, off course here, but any word or chatter about Chad Kelly? I would love to see Denver give him another chance. Well, he hasn't broken into houses lately or stolen any vacuum cleaners, getting hit by them. But, no, I don't see him returning to the Broncos. That bridge is kind of burned. They gave him a chance. He kind of hurt Elway's trust. And once you hurt Elway's trust, you're kind of done. So
he was on the thinnest device anyway. And
he took a flamethrower to the ice.
He did.
Yeah.
So that book is closed, but he's still working out, putting out videos on Twitter. So he's still trying to break in. His best bet might be to try and catch on with the AAF.
That's what I was saying. I don't know why he doesn't pursue that, but that's Chad for you. Logan says, what would the Broncos have to do to get another first-round pick? It's pretty simple.
You probably got to trade Von Miller.
Right. Or one of your star players. They don't have many, but, Von or that's pretty much it.
That's the only guy you're getting a first-round pick for today.
Maybe Chubb.
But you wouldn't trade Chubb a year removed from 12 sacks as a rookie. He's one of only 10 players in NFL history to post 12 sacks as a rookie. Not even Von Miller's in that group.
Or unless they trade from 10 down like 25. They might pick up a first round. But other than that, don't expect the Broncos to have 2 first round
And they're
picks.
not going to trade Von Miller. So
no. We're not Brandon Stokely. We don't have to advocate for that.
That's right.
Greg says, what nose tackle? Because Pecco supposedly is moving on from Denver. They have no starting nose tackle on the roster right now.
Shelby Harris.
But they are very high on Shelby Harris, who converted from defensive end. I think he'll good.
Shame on us for forgetting to ask Elway specifically about Harris. It wasn't a topic that was touched on today at the Combine, but what we've been told and what we've heard as reporters on the Broncos is that they are going to tender. Shelby Harris is a restricted free agent this year, and they're going to tender him probably at the second-round level, which means no other team's going to kind of swoop in like C.J. Anderson a few years back and sign him to an offer sheet. That means his salary is going to get bumped to about $3 million. That means starter money. So he's going to play starting nose tackle for your Denver Broncos. And look for them to – it's such a deep D-line class this year. Look for them to add in the draft for the future. But Harris is going to get paid a little bit of an increase and a raise this year, and then next year he's going to really make some money.
That's another sneaky first-round option for Denver is a defensive lineman. When Derek Wolfe, he's coming back. The Broncos also floated that they're picking up his option. He'll return, but he's no spring chicken. He's always hurt. They don't have much behind him in terms of pass rushers, so defensive lineman is also a possibility in round 1.
Definitely.
Micah says, what second-day quarterbacks do you think Scangarello is looking at? It's a great question.
Yeah.
We talk about this all the time on the podcast. I think if they don't go quarterback in round 1, I would like a guy in the middle rounds. I would not waste a pick on a Will Grier or Daniel Jones. Give me Brett Rypien. Give me a Stidham. I think I like those 2 guys in the middle rounds. But to me, if they don't take a QB in this weak draft class in round 1, I would not even waste my time at all. I would just play out this season with Joe Flacco and hopefully get a good round pick in 2020.
Some of you might not have heard this name. Those of you who listen to the podcast have heard the name. But keep an eye out on Eric Dungy. He might be more of a day 3 quarterback, but he's a player with some intriguing franchise tools. I'm not calling him a franchise quarterback, but he has some franchise tools. He does come with some drawbacks, but if the Broncos end up going Devin White or DeAndre Baker at pick 10, as someone who really wants them to take a quarterback, I could live with it if they got a guy like Eric Dungy later on in the draft, even if it's not day 2.
I think it's a foregone conclusion, though. They will take a quarterback at some point.
At some point, they have
between
to.
rounds 1 and 7, they have to.
You got Joe Flacco, you got Kevin Hogan, and Garrett Grayson. I mean, you got to.
Hogan's a free agent. They literally have just Grayson and
half the team's a free agent
That's right.
this year.
That's right. Lane says, good to see you again. Thank you, Lane. I appreciate that. Do you think they will address O-line early? Not necessarily early. I mean, they're going to look to bring back Valdir at right tackle.
We learned that today.
We learned that. Billy Turner, they're working to re-sign. Paradis, that's up in the air. I think he might be gone if he wants the highest paid contract, but they're not going to draft a center in the first round. They have a left tackle. They have a left guard. So I don't see O-line being an early need for the Broncos.
It depends, too. Like Elway talked about today, how much of a collaborative process it is with the coaches on draft day. So who knows? If the right tackle is there maybe at pick 10 and you got Mike Munchak pounding the table, you can't rule anything out, but not round 1, maybe round 2.
And Munchak will have a big role in the Broncos offense this season in coaching. I mean, Elway and Fangio both said that specifically, that they're going to lean on Munchak experience. So he'll for sure put his money on the table for an offensive lineman. I just don't see it early in the draft. Scott says, Clay or Cook for free agent? Tight end would be good. Yeah, tight end is a massive need. I'm a big Jared Cook fan. I think in this offense, Joe Flacco loves his tight ends. He's a playmaker down the seam. I would love Joe Flacco in a Broncos uniform.
Yeah, between the two, I'd have to go Jared Cook. But another guy to keep in mind is Demetrius Harris, the tight end from Kansas City, who's been playing behind arguably the number 1B tight end in the NFL, and Travis Kelce there in Kansas City.
And he hurt the Broncos last year.
Yeah.
He make big catches on the sideline. The Broncos know what he can do. So
that's right.
John says maybe bring back Demaryius Thomas at a discount next year. It's not going to happen. They moved on for a reason. He's coming off an Achilles injury now. His time in Denver is done. His career might be over. So
I mean, with the exception of Brock Osweiler.
Yeah, they don't bring anyone back.
Elway doesn't. Once he cuts bait,
right.
That's it.
TJ Ward's a perfect example of that because they could have brought him back easy last year.
The next time you'll see Demaryius Thomas's ring is when he gets put in the Ring of Fame.
That's right. Don't hold your breath until then, though. Jacob says, hoping we get HaHa or Collins for safety in free agency. Both are great players, but I think Landon Collins will stay in New York. And to me, if they go for a safety in free agency, it has to be Adrian Amos. And I saw a question about that, who asked if it could be the Broncos' #1 target. I think it's a slam dunk. I mean, familiar with Fangio, fits a massive needed safety, be a good compliment to Justin Simmons. Landon Collins will be overpriced even if he reaches the open market. I think he stays in New York. Give me Adrian Amos any day.
Well, there was that report, too, that Collins cleared out his locker in New York.
Right.
So who knows what happens there. But
still expensive.
If you're spending money at safety, how big of a gap is there really between Adrian Amos and Landon Collins? Now, Landon Collins, former second-round pick, former Alabama player, had that one All-Pro year in 2016. But you talk a lot about, Zach, the fact that it's a what have you done for me lately type of league. And not that Collins has been some kind of bum, but if that's how we're really going to – if that's the tip of the spear in our analysis, Amos has done more lately than Collins, and he could be had for probably about 3/4 of the price.
Oh, yeah, and you can teach that defense to the Broncos holdover players. I mean, that's having a coach on the field. So, to me, it's a no-brainer. Mike says maybe Quan Alexander. This is the guy that we touched on in the podcast for inside linebacker. C.J. Mosley's on an option, but the Broncos will need a new ILB with Brandon Marshall. Quan fits the bill. I would like Devin White, though, personally, if I had to choose.
Yeah. But that's another position that we talked about earlier that I expect the Broncos to spend some money in free agency at off-ball linebacker. And if C.J. Mosley's off the market, Quan Alexander is kind of the next guy that you would take a real hard look at in terms of his age and his scheme fit to what Fangio needs. And Fangio's scheme is very dependent on its off-ball linebackers. Puts a lot of pressure on those guys, not just in the run game, but in coverage as well.
Vanessa wants to know if they're really keeping Derek Wolfe. Yes, Elway did announce they're picking up his option. We'll be back for one more year. Hopefully he stays healthy. So when he's healthy, he's a great player.
The question is, are they going to extend him so that he can retire a Bronco? Because we've heard buzz that that's been a plan, that they want to maybe ask him to, for another couple of years on his contract, reduce his $8 million cap number this year by floating some money into the future, give him a little bit more wiggle room in free agency this year. So don't be shocked if that happens, but worst case scenario, he is staying in Denver this year.
Thomas asks, any word on ownership within the Bolins? Any news to a resolution? Not that we've heard. There will be lawyers. This is going to be a dragged-out case for many months, if not years. So nothing new on that front. It's going to be pretty ugly.
And frankly, it's not something we've really pursued as a trope while we're here at the Combine. We're more focused on the roster and
personnel
the draft
decisions
and stuff. So
Tim says, will DeMarcus Walker play this year? Let me just take that as DeMarcus Walker's biggest fan other than his mom and his agent. If he can't succeed under Vic Fangio, who got so much talent out of Lemons last year in Chicago, Walker might be a lost cause. I still want to see what he can do with one more year with proper coaching and adult coaching him and not Vance Joseph. I think he was a second-round pick for a reason. He was a great pass rusher at Florida State.
Always around the ball.
He is. Every time I see him play, he's always around the ball, and the Broncos need that interior disruptor. So I want to see what he can do under Fangio, but if he doesn't succeed, then he might be that D word.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard we've been told that don't be surprised if he's one of these surprise cuts this year, 3 years removed from being a second-round pick. I'm not going to go that far myself because even though he has struggled to get on the field, there have been reports, we've been told that he's kind of had an entitled attitude. I mean, his Twitter handle is Living Legend. So we can believe that, but he does just have a knack. And even though he was probably drafted to the wrong scheme, he belongs in a 4-3. There's some talent there and ability to push the pocket from the inside, and the Broncos can't say no to that. They need that right now.
Greg's pining for Eric Dungy. Chris is pining for Brett Rypien, two of our guys in the middle rounds there. So those are two names to keep in mind. The Broncos go QB in the middle rounds, Dungy and Rypien. Keep those names in mind. Edwin says, what's up with Case? That's another topic of conversation today.
Weird day on Case.
It really is. What we heard is that the Broncos, there's been no movement. I mean, they're still waiting to see what they want to do with him. They'll allow him to explore a trade, even though his reps haven't initiated a trade yet. And then Elway in the next breath said he welcomed Case back at a reduced salary to be a backup.
In other words, veteran minimum.
Right. A big pay cut. It's not going to happen. He has a market as small as it may be in the NFL. I think he ultimately will be released or traded. I don't think they're keeping him around as a very expensive backup.
No, and he's got the Broncos. Let's face it. I mean, Keenum has the Broncos over a barrel. No matter what happens, they owe him $7 million.
Right.
And his agent's not going to let him take anything less than that. So if the Broncos say, yeah, Case, we want to keep you around, but we want you to take the veteran minimum and be Flacco's backup, Keenum will say, no,
thanks, but no thanks.
Cut me and pay me my $7 million that you have to pay me. So he's not going to be here. I mean, those are talking points. He's trying to be respectful to Keenum, who was, kind of a quasi-pseudo franchise quarterback for him for 1 year. Didn't work out. And he's still trying to keep his trade value up. So he's got to speak positively in situations like the Combine.
I was just going to say he's leveraging right now. He doesn't want to seem like he's going to cut Keenum. He wants another team to come up and acquire him. So I still expect him to be off the roster fairly shortly. Richard says, how will Butt do? Jake Butt. I just put on Twitter, you can't count anything out of Jake Butt right now. He's 3 ACL tears. I mean, 1 is devastating. Anything the Broncos get out of Butt this year will be a bonus.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not something the team can hang its hat on. There's so much to love and like and get excited about Jake Butt. He offers a lot of potential for being a phenomenal underneath tight end for Joe Flacco, but the Broncos are really lacking a seam buster at tight end to stretch defenses on the inside. And that's, even at its best, that's not Jake Butt. So that's, again, and Elway talked about it, it's a position they're looking to upgrade.
Jared Cook, Demetrius Harris, 2 names that would fit that major roster need.
Yeah.
Dustin says, could you see the Broncos trading up for Dwayne Haskins? I can't see this happening. I don't really see Elway moving up for any quarterback in this draft. He's not going to sell the farm. He'll hold tight at his pick, or maybe at the most move up a couple spots, but Haskins won't be his guy.
Here's more of a scenario that is, let's say he loves Drew Lock, or if he loves Dwayne Haskins, okay? And for some inexplicable reason, one of them or both of them or whatever are slipping through the draft, and it's a run on corners or whatever, or defensive line, and he's within striking distance. One of them drops to 2 or 3 in front of Denver. I could see Elway at that point packaging, but Joe Flacco took all the pressure off of Elway, feeling like he had to sell the farm to move up to take a quarterback. I don't see it happening.
I seriously got the feeling that Elway believes the Broncos can contend with Flacco in 2019 and will contend with him. So there's no reason for him to sell the farm. Jordan says, are we keeping Cravens? Great question, because Elway just said he'll have every chance to make this team. Another player like DeMarcus Walker, if he can't succeed under Vic Fangio, it's probably a lost cause.
And a similar player to Walker in terms of his attitude, kind of entitled, not taking things seriously.
Yeah.
So
more so, I think, than Walker. He rubbed his teammates the wrong way in Washington.
That's right. And we're talking about Mr. Death by Inches himself.
Right.
So, don't let Vic catch you slipping or sleeping in team meetings or late, because that might be your ticket out the door. So let's just hope he takes it seriously with Cravens. And he's got all the talent in the world. He was a second-round pick in 2016 when he came out of USC. Right. The Broncos actually had a first-round grade on him. That's why they were so keen to get him from the Redskins when they could. But, yeah, last season was quite a disappointment. Hurt his knee, and then he just didn't have a great attitude when he came back. He was a little bit in over his head. So we'll see. It
was bad for him last year. David says, any players you see we may trade for draft picks? They don't really have any trade chips. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders maybe, but even then, coming off his injury. Other than that, Devontae Booker perhaps.
That's what I was going to say.
That's probably it. They don't really have many star players left who aren't free agents.
Keep an eye on Sanders, though. Don't slam the door. I mean, all the words, all the buzzwords and talking points out of the Combine, again, have been positive on Sanders, but that's, of course, what you would do even if you were planning on trading him. They're not going to stand up at the Combine here and go, we're making some calls. We're going to try and trade him, because it shows a desperation. It takes away from leverage. So, no, they're going to say good things. They're going to talk about how he's ahead of schedule, even if he's not. All good things. So, for me, and this is just me talking, I kind of take it with a grain of salt at this point.
Are the Broncos looking at any AAF players? Doug wants to know. Maybe
Elway didn't even seem to.
Yeah,
he couldn't even say the league name.
Yeah, he didn't even care about it. He said he has no interest in watching the AAF or the XFL. I'd be really surprised if they went to that well.
His scouts are probably checking it out, though.
Yeah. Young Tyrone says, what are they going to do with Shane Ray? He's a free agent. Yeah, he's gone, probably to Kansas City or another needy team. He was a major bust here, and the Broncos are glad to turn that page.
Yep.
What else do we got here?
Muhammad Wilkerson.
There's a name. We'll get big money in free agency. I don't know about that. I think his time with the Jets, the way he ended that time there, kind of ruined his value in the NFL.
Yeah, and the Broncos don't need to spend money there because the draft's so deep, and they got Shelby on an RFA. You still got Gotsis one more year, D. Walker another year, Wolf another year. They're not going to have to really take a hard look at spending on that position until next year.
Yeah, they're pretty good there. Sue says, what free agent do you hope we get? I have a couple in mind. Adrian Amos to me is number one. Bryce Callahan, the corner from the Bears, a slot corner, but the Broncos are toying with the idea of moving Chris Harris Jr. around to the outside. Bryce Callahan would be an elite slot quarterback. Also, Adrian Amos and right tackle Juwan James from the Dolphins, who's now a free agent. The Broncos were this close to trading for him last year. They signed Valdir, who's now a free agent. Juwan James is a free agent. He'd be a massive upgrade. I like him a lot.
Yeah. I mean, Juwan James is a guy high on the wish list. But talking to Elway at the Combine, it sounded like they're going to make every effort to get Valdir re-signed, which kind of takes the right tackle need off the table. So Adrian Amos, for me, would probably be at the top. If C.J. Mosley's off the board, which it looks like he is.
BX Hollywood says Devin White at 10. Good idea. I love that idea. I mean, this guy is a three-down monster. He's going to be what Roquan Smith was to the Bears last year, if not better. So in this defense with Fangio, the Broncos haven't had that inside linebacker presence since Trevathan.
I have one caveat to that. I don't disagree at all. But if Drew Lock is there and they took White, I would see that as a mistake. But if the quarterbacks that they like or that fit Denver at pick 10 are gone, yes, go get Devin White and don't even lose 1 week of sleep over it.
I agree with that. Joe says, I love to watch Lindsey run. What's his injury status? He had surgery on his wrist. He's not impacted for training camp. He might do some OTA work when it starts up in a few months. He might lose some explosion in his upper body because he can't weight train with that wrist injury. But other than that, his legs are fine. He'll be right back as the Broncos RB1 and hopefully making the Pro Bowl again next year.
Yeah, it's nothing to worry about. If it was his leg or, lower leg, Achilles, or a knee, you have to worry. But it was a wrist. As long as it's not one of those freak injuries like Shane Ray had that just lingered and lingered. But that was an outlier. You hardly ever see those type of injuries derail a career. A wrist injury like it did Shane Ray.
And he was a lot durable. Lindsey last year. He took hit after hit, so I don't worry about him at all. Rookie says, what about Shaq Barrett? Like Ray, he's a free agent, and like Ray, he's probably not going to return.
Wants to be a starter.
Right, I don't blame him. He deserves to start. He can probably start in 2/3 of the NFL teams. Yeah. I'm always been a bigger fan of Barrett, though, over Shane Ray. I mean, if they had to make a choice, I'd happily bring back Barrett. But
Shane Ray had one good game as a Bronco, Week 4, 2017. He had 3 sacks on the road in Kansas City.
Of course.
That's all he's really ever done for the Denver Broncos. So happy trails. You got a Chiefs tattoo. Go sign in Kansas City.
Go home. Have a nice life.
Yeah.
All right, what else do we got here? Eric says, how about Hicks or Perriman at ILB in free agency? We talked about Perriman on our podcast. Yeah. If there's a backup to Mosley and a backup to what was the inside linebacker we just talked about? Quan Alexander. I would not be opposed to Perriman at all. Healthy, he's a really good player.
Yeah. He's a thumper, too. Like he brings some wood to the middle of the Broncos defense. My only question there would be whether or not he can turn and run with tight ends and running backs like Fangio likes his linebackers to do at times. So I'm not sure about that, but, we'll see.
Anthony says there's probably no chance that Antonio Brown comes to Denver. He's too expensive and too much of an injury. It's not a question, but I agree with you. The Broncos supposedly are not interested in them, and it was the wrong choice anyway for them to make a run. They're not one player away from a Super Bowl. There are a few.
If it was Peyton Manning on the roster.
Right, or a better quarterback.
Yeah, someone that you knew, like literally that one offensive piece could get you over the hump. I mean, the Broncos have so many holes. Again, half their roster are unrestricted free agents, so – that's the least of their worries right now.
They'll go to the Niners, I think.
I do too.
So, Richard says, what if Murray's there at 10? Like we just talked about, Elway pretty much ruled out Murray because he plays predominantly shotgun.
Unless it was the smoke screen to end all smoke screens. I mean, but you could kind of tell when someone's putting on airs.
Especially Elway.
And Elway, man, he was just – let's look at the best predictor of future behavior being past behavior. 6'7" and change Brock Osweiler, 6'7" Paxton Lynch. Peyton Manning was 6'5". Elway as a player was 6'3". The dude values height, and he talked about it on Wednesday because it allows the quarterback to see from under center, and he wants his offense to utilize under center because it helps the running game. And the reason it helps the running game, just so if you're wondering how that helps, is if the quarterback's under center, that means the fullback can line up directly behind the quarterback, which means the defense doesn't know which way the ball can go on a run, so they can't sell out strong or weak. Most of the time they're going to still sell out strong whatever side the tight end's on, but they still don't know, so it allows the offense to dictate, basically is what Elway said.
Elway likes quarterbacks who are built like him. That's how massive his ego is.
That's right.
Donnie says, good to see you back, Zach. I appreciate that, Donnie. Thank you for tuning in. We'll take a couple more questions here and we'll hop off.
Yeah, we got to get out of here soon.
That's right. They're about to kick us out.
Kick us out.
Junior says, do you think they will look to the draft for a burn now that they have extended Sanders? No, we answered that question already. Now that they brought back Sanders, they're not going to go after another receiver. I mean, maybe in the middle rounds or maybe a low expensive free agent, but they have Sutton and Hamilton and they have to develop, and they have Sanders to take the top off. So between those three and Tim Patrick and River Craycraft. So I think they're in a pretty good spot.
One guy to watch, though, is if Penny Hart falls, he's a guy they might just not be able to resist taking a chance. You know, 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick, somewhere in there maybe. But if he's there in the 4th or 5th round, I'd be pissed off if the Broncos don't get Penny Hart. He's a good player.
Yeah, he is.
Check him out.
Zoe says, what about Will Parks, Justin Simmons, and Darian Stewart? Stewart's a goner. He'll be the next one probably released. Simmons is starting, and he has Pro Bowl potential under Vic Fangio. And Will Parks, honestly, surprisingly, he turned it on last year. He's a really dependable player to have as your third safety.
We all expected it to be Simmons taking that quantum leap forward in year 3 last year. But it was Parks. Never forget that hit he laid on that Steelers tight end on the goal line. It just took all the momentum away from the Steelers and really helped fuel the Broncos to win a game they were expected to lose handily.
Right. Everett says, are we going to lock up Harris for the long haul? I assume you mean Chris Harris and not Shelby Harris, but I would sign both. I mean, Chris Harris Jr. has been a warrior for the Broncos, a Pro Bowl, all-pro talent, perennial top cornerback. They should do right by him and extend him, and Shelby Harris. Both are great players.
Unfortunately, Elway said it hasn't even been a conversation yet, and that as it regards Chris Harris Jr. and a possible extension, they're going to worry about the first wave, his verbiage, of free agency, and then they'll probably take a look at Harris, extending him, and take a look probably at Wolf as well, would be my guess.
Yeah. What do we see about Chubb and Lindsey being free agents? They're going to race, guys. They're going to have a foot race, supposedly. They're not free agents at all. That's definitely fake news or fake comments.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
All right, we'll take one more question.
One more.
Let's make it a good one. Young Tyrone says, do you think John Elway will get the quarterback thing right? I mean, that's the million-dollar question. If we had lottery tickets, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. So he knows that the pressure is on. He knows that his contract is ticking. He knows that time is approaching. He can't get another wrong. He can't go through another Paxton Lynch. It's just got to pick the right guy.
One thing you got to keep in mind, too, is Elway's had some weird extenuating circumstances where his head coach kind of rebelled on him when Paxton was a rookie. Elway wanted Paxton to play a lot more than he did, and Kubiak just wasn't falling in line the way most head coaches would for their GM. And then since then, there's just been a lot of weird, curveballs that have been thrown his way. A lot of it's his own fault too, don't get me wrong, but it's been just an awkward 3 years since Super Bowl 50. So I think this is kind of good to start fresh with Flacco coming in. But if they can get a quarterback at pick 10, again, I still hammer on that. If they can get Drew Lock or Dwayne Haskins at pick 10, I think it could really set the franchise up for the next 10 years. And his contract's up in 3 years at the end of 2021. Yep. And if he doesn't have the future of the quarterback position solved by then, it's going to be hard to see him sticking around, especially with ownership being up in the air. So
he has to keep swinging.
He does. He said he will. He said he's going to. He told us that last combine, in fact.
I think, though, that is going to do. We're getting a lot of the same questions. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you all for tuning in with me. Hopefully we provided answers and provided some insight for you. Please keep it locked right here to Broncos on 24/7 Sport. We'll be posting news, analysis, takeaways, anything and everything from the combine today. Follow my partner, Chad and Jensen, on Twitter. Follow me at Kelberman 24/7.
Podcast.
Subscribe to the Huddle Up podcast. If you like us on here, you will love us there on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. What was it? Castify.
Castbox, Spotify, YouTube.
YouTube. I mean, anywhere you can find an iPod.
People listen to a lot of podcasts on YouTube now, so you can find it on YouTube as well.
Keep it locked here. Thank you all for tuning in with me. Until I see you guys next time, as always, go Broncos.
Peace out.